A federal appeals court has ruled that President Trump can keep control of the National Guard troops he deployed to Los Angeles. The unanimous ruling overturns a lower court's decision, which said that the immigration protests in LA were not severe enough for Trump to federalize the National Guard. But now those service members can continue to operate under the direction of the Trump administration. Joining us now is CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor, Jessica Levinson. Jessica, thanks for being with us. What were the takeaways that you had from the Ninth Circuit's ruling here?
So that Ninth Circuit ruling came late last night, and they essentially said, yes, we're going to continue to stay the temporary restraining order that Judge Breyer, the trial court judge, had put on the president's decision to try and federalize the National Guard, which is another way of saying the president's decision stands. Now, why? Because the Ninth Circuit looked at the statute that the president pointed to and determined that he did, in fact, have the authority to federalize the National Guard under that statute. And they did so very briefly for a couple of reasons. They disagreed with the Trump administration that federal judges can't review a president's decisions. But once they reviewed the decision, they said, you know what, we really have to defer when it comes to questions of whether or not the triggering facts are there to give the president power. Is there, in fact, a situation where the president is unable to execute federal law through the regular forces? And the court said, the president said yes, and we're basically going to defer to the president. So it was a very different view of this statute than the one that the trial court judge, Judge Breyer, had.
Of course, temperature is cooling a little bit in what we're seeing out there in Los Angeles. But given this latest ruling, what happens next?
So what happens next is there was actually a hearing in Judge Breyer's courtroom this morning, and there's part of the case that was not appealed to the Ninth Circuit. And California is arguing that there's been a violation of something called the Posse Comitatus Act. That's the statute that says that the military cannot directly enforce domestic law on U.S. soil. And so there's going to be briefing on this question of whether or not Judge Breyer even has jurisdiction to hear that argument. In the meantime, the rest of the case will play out on the merits, that bigger question of does the president have the power under the statute?
More to come. Jessica Levinson, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.